This is an MJA Inc. Investigations warning. This MJA podcast is rated E for explicit. Some details of a case and language used on this podcast might be upsetting to some of our listeners. Listeners' discretion is advised. And for those who are still with us, kick back and enjoy the show. When there is an ending, there was a beginning. Every victim has a picture to paint. Every true crime has its time and place. Please join our MJ podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Welcome to our MJ podcast. This series, Unsolved Crimes, Episode 13, Part 4, 8 Unsolved Homicides. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. Joining me later will be our co-host, Olivia. Olivia and I will profile 8 unsolved homicides. We are coming to you from Morrisonville, New York, located in the Adirondack Mountains. The passage of time can actually help a case. There are many that some witnesses become more willing to cooperate, and you have the technology advances. DNA testing has unmasked time and again violent criminals who got away with living among us for too long. Welcome to Michigan. Case 1. Unsolved Homicide of Jane Doe. On August 23, 1992, a decomposing body of a female was discovered by a pedestrian along Krieger Road in New Buffalo Township, Michigan. Case 2. Unsolved Homicide of Don Jefferson, Jr. On June 24, 2008, 34-year-old Don Jefferson Jr., a black male, was fatally shot at his home located in Detroit, Michigan. Welcome to Ohio. Case 3. Unsolved Homicide of Kathy Menendez. On August 20th, 1994, 17-year-old Kathy Menendez, a white female, went missing from her hometown in Portage County, Ohio. On August 25th, 1994, the 17-year-old lifeless body of Kathy Menendez was discovered near Berlin Reservoir, Ohio. Case 4. Unsolved Homicide of Chelsea Johnson. In April 2012, the body of 15-year-old Chelsea Johnson, a white female, was discovered near a creek close to the intersection of Pleasant Avenue and Niles Road in Fairfield, Ohio. Welcome to Wisconsin. Case 5. Unsolved Homicide of Betty Rolfe. On November 6, 1988, 60-year-old Betty Rolfe, a white female, disappeared without a trace while walking about 10 blocks to her job in Appleton, Wisconsin. The very next day, on November 7, 1988, Rolfe's lifeless body was discovered wedged in between the bridge and a cement brace. Case 6. Unsolved Homicide of Deidre Arm. On June 10, 2006, 21-year-old Deidre Arm, a white female, disappeared while bar hopping in Wisconsin Rapids. 5 months later, Deidre Arm's skeletal remains were found by hunters in the town of Seneca near Port Edwards, Wisconsin. Welcome to Minnesota. Case 7. Unsolved Homicide of Cindy Joy Eliza. On March 24, 1977, 19-year-old Cindy Joy Eliza, a white female, was seen by friends at a bar located in Virginia, Minnesota. Several hours later, Cindy Joy Eliza's badly beaten body was discovered about 8 miles north of Aurora, Minnesota. Case 8. Unsolved Homicide of Jane Doe. On June 12, 1993, the decomposing body of a white female was discovered in rural Washington County, Minnesota. Jane Doe is a white female with an estimated age of 30 to 65 years of age. The cause of death was unknown, but the circumstances point to homicide. Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, Olivia will be on the line. Olivia and I will profile 8 unsolved homicides. Be back in a moment. Welcome to our MJ podcast, this series, Unsolved Crimes, Episode 13, Part 4, 8 Unsolved Homicides. We have Olivia on the line. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm just fine. And are you ready to dig into these unsolved homicides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Welcome to Michigan. According to the Cold Case Project, there are 42,650 unsolved murders from 1980 to 2019 in the state of Michigan. Some of these cases have remained unsolved for half of a century or more. The dead cannot cry out for justice. It is the duty of the living to do so for them. Please join us. Welcome to New Buffalo Township, Michigan. The Doe Network has 15 female Jane Does listed as being discovered in the state of Michigan. Victim 1. Unsolved homicide of Jane Doe. On August 23, 1992, a decomposing body of a female was discovered by a pedestrian along Krieger Road in New Buffalo Township, Michigan. Jane Doe was killed days before, and she had been left at the location for around 1 day. The estimated age of the white female Jane Doe was 65 to 75 years old. The cause of death is homicide. Jane Doe was found nude, and her hands and dentures were missing. Jane Doe's decomposing body was wrapped in a sheet, a white towel, and 2 garbage bags. Afterwards, the remains were bound with twine. Investigators believe she may have lived at a care facility in either northern Illinois or Indiana. This conclusion was made based on the towel's similarity to those used in those institutions. Jane Doe was nicknamed Betty the Bag Lady. The DNA Doe Project is involved in her case to identify potential relatives through genetic genealogy. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Michigan State Police Special Investigations Section at 269-657-5551 or 269-683-4411.
Welcome to Detroit, Michigan. Victim 2. Unsolved homicide of Don Jefferson, Jr. On June 24, 2008, 34-year-old Don Jefferson, Jr., a black male, was fatally shot in his home located in Detroit, Michigan. It was reported that Jefferson had spent the day boating with friends when he received a call to come back home. There was no mention what the phone call was about or why the 34-year-old Jefferson had to return home. At around 1 a.m., Jefferson went to answer a knock at the door. When the 34-year-old Jefferson answered the door, he was shot and killed. After 25 years, Jefferson's family still seeks justice for the 34-year-old Jefferson, who was the father of 1 son and was loved by many. Crime Stoppers of Michigan is offering a cash reward of up to $2,500 for information that leads to an arrest. Anyone with information about Jefferson's murder is asked to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-SPEAK-UP or 1-800-SPEAKUP.org.
Welcome to Ohio. The Ohio Attorney General has formed a cold case unit. The new unit, based out of the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations, reaches out to local law enforcement agencies to initiate a fresh look at unsolved cases. The unit offers new forensic analysis and investigative resources. Welcome to Berlin Reservoir, Ohio. Victim 3. Unsolved homicide of Kathy Menendez. On August 20th, 1994, 17-year-old Kathy Menendez, a white female, went missing from her home in Portage County, Ohio. On August 25th, 1994, the 17-year-old body of Kathy Menendez was found nude on Oil Well Road off of Pewtown Road, located in Berlin Reservoir, Ohio. The young 17-year-old Menendez was strangled and stabbed and bludgeoned to death. Kathy Menendez was dumped with no clothes on. Investigators believe the 17-year-old Menendez was killed somewhere else and dumped in the woods. Months later, another homicide victim was located in the same area. This gave way to trying to connect other cases for law enforcement and had the idea that they were dealing with a serial killer. The number one suspect was a convicted killer and suspected serial killer, Larry D. Hall from Wabash, Indiana. Larry D. Hall was a murderer, a rapist, and a convicted serial killer who stalked and murdered numerous girls and women between the early 1980s and early 1990s. MJA has been involved in the Hall investigation for years, where we have 2 Indiana cases that fits Hall's MO. If you have any info concerning this case, please call. The Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania FBI is asking for tips in the case, and you call 412-432-4000.
Welcome to Fairfield, Ohio. Victim 4. Unsolved Homicide of Chelsea Johnson. After 11 years, loved ones still seek answers. In April 2012, the body of 15-year-old Chelsea Johnson, a white female, was discovered near a creek close to the intersection of Pleasant Avenue and Niles Road in Fairfield, Ohio. The 15-year-old Johnson was found at the location, stabbed to death. George D. Davis II of Cincinnati was sent to prison for drug trafficking and having weapons under disability for attempting to exchange heroin for sex with Johnson. But Davis was never charged in connection with Johnson's murder. George D. Davis II was released from prison in 2017, according to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. Davis was arrested in May 2017 in Hamilton County, Ohio, on a felony charge of promoting prostitution and is still awaiting trial. Authorities have said a grand jury did not return an indictment against the suspect in the case, despite an intensive year-long investigation in which the Butler County Sheriff's Office took a fresh look at the unsolved homicide. The 15-year-old Johnson's mother believes the case was botched from the beginning because detectives placed blame on her. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Fairfield, Ohio Police Department at 513-829-8201.
Let's take a pause for the cause, and when we return, we will profile 4 more unsolved homicide cases. Be back in a moment.
Searching in the dark, trusting every clue I found, but the truth has not been told, 'cause every corner of these woods is hollow. I can't see in the dark.
Welcome back to our MJ podcast. This series, Unsolved Crimes, Episode 13, Part 4, 8 Unsolved Homicides. Welcome to Wisconsin. According to Project Cold Case, there are more than 80 8,600 homicides in Wisconsin between 1980 and 2019, with a clearance rate of 80%. About 1,700 of those murders remain unsolved. Definitions of cold cases vary depending on the agency you ask. For some, it's 3 years with no leads, but basically, it's 5 years with no activity on the case. Even when cases go cold, detectives say there is always hope. Unsolved murders leave victims and families struggling with unanswered questions and often prolong a painful grieving process. Welcome to Appleton, Wisconsin. Victim 5. Unsolved homicide of Betty Rolfe. On November 6th.
It's Rolfe.
Yeah, Rolfe.
Rolfe.
On November 6, 1988, 60-year-old Betty Rolfe, a white female, disappeared without a trace while walking about 10 blocks to her job in Appleton, Wisconsin. The very next day, on November 7, 1988, after the 60-year-old Rolfe was reported missing, a police officer walking the route Rolfe would have taken to work checked an overpass and found Rolfe's body wedged between a concrete brace. The 60-year-old Betty Rolfe of Appleton, Wisconsin, had been beaten and sexually assaulted and died of strangulation, my fault. I might add that it was reported that this area where Rolfe was walking 10 blocks to work was a very busy area, meaning our offender was comfortable with his surroundings to commit such a crime in a public open activity. No arrests have been made despite a DNA profile that was later developed from evidence left at the scene. The sample was used to eliminate people connected to Rolfe. No matches came up when it was entered into the FBI's nationwide CODIS system of known offenders. Despite all these years having passed since the murder was committed, this is a good one. the Allegheny County Sheriff's Department has not given up on the case, and investigators continue to search out new leads in the effort to solve the crime. If you have any info concerning this case, please contact the Allegheny County Sheriff's Department at 920-832-5605.
Don't ever make fun of my Boston, Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah.
Welcome to the township of Seneca, located in Wood County, Wisconsin. Victim 6. Unsolved homicide of Deidre Ham. On June 10th, 2006, 21-year-old Deidre Ham, a white female, disappeared while bar hopping in Wisconsin Rapids. Investigators say Ham hired a babysitter to watch her daughter when she went out for the night. The 21-year-old Ham stopped with friends at several downtown bars in Wisconsin Rapids, which included the Body Shop and the Finish Line. The authorities say she wasn't alone. The 21-year-old Ham was seen leaving with someone that no one seemed to know. Police were baffled from the beginning, with no initial signs of foul play. It wasn't until 5 months later that Ham's skeletal remains were found by hunters in the town of Seneca, near Port Edwards, Wisconsin. An autopsy would rule her cause of death as undetermined, but there was trauma on the bones, which could point to homicide. Then, in 2009, there was a potential break. The Wisconsin Rapids police chief received a tip to check out 36-year-old Christopher Rivak, a Wisconsin Rapids native who moved to Missouri. Rivak's description was strikingly similar to the sketch released by police. Christopher Rivak at the time was also a suspect in another missing case, where a female bartender went missing, in which Rivak was found to be connected to. Wisconsin Rapids police would learn Revek had been involved in a missing persons case before. Revek was a suspect in the 2007 disappearance of 36-year-old female from Missouri. The victim was a mother of three and bartender who worked at the Eagles Lodge in Ava, Missouri. Police say Revek was a regular at the lodge and was there with the female bartender the night of the crime. Wisconsin Rapids police found that Revek was in Wisconsin Rapids at the time 21-year-old Deidre Hahn disappeared, but investigators would never get the chance to speak with him. Revek died by suicide while in custody in Missouri. Investigators are giving up in the search for answers. They believe even after Revek's death, someone has a piece of the puzzle they'll need to close this case. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department.
Welcome to Minnesota. It's one of Minnesota's oldest cold cases. The murder of 19-year-old Cindy Joy Elias. The one that cut the 19-year-old Elias's life short, her killer has been walking free for over 45 years. Welcome to Virginia, Minnesota. Victim 7. Unsolved homicide of Cindy Joy Elias. In the morning hours of March 24th, 1977, 19-year-old Cindy Joy Elias, a white female, was seen by friends at a bar located in Virginia, Minnesota. At around 12:30 a.m., a witness reportedly saw the 19-year-old Elias looking for a ride home. The 19-year-old Elias mentioned that she may head out to hitchhike. Several hours later, Cindy Joy Elias's badly beaten body was discovered under a pile of brush off a logging road about 8 miles north of Aurora, Minnesota. It was nearly a half-hour drive away from the bar where the 19-year-old Elias was last seen. According to the St. Louis County officials, she had suffered multiple traumatic injuries to her head. Whoever killed Cindy is thought to have had knowledge of the area because of where the body was found. Cindy Elias's family continues to hope that answers can be found, but as the years pass, that hope slowly starts to fade. In 2008, officials announced they were going to exhume Cindy's body to take another look at her remains. This move was in the hope of finding uncollected evidence. What, if any, new evidence was uncovered remains uncleared. Although Cindy Elias's case is the oldest in the state, that hasn't deterred investigators. An official with the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office told Dateline that several tips are still called in each year, and every one of the tips is fully investigated. The case is being investigated with the assistance of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Cold Case Homicide Unit. The thought is that new technology advances in forensic testing may hold the key to identify who killed 19-year-old Cindy Joy Elias. The victim's family and law enforcement are simply wondering who could have cut Elias's life so short. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the St. Louis County, Minnesota Sheriff's Department at 218-749-7134. There is a $50,000 reward being offered by officials for information leading to an arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Cindy Joy Elias's murder.
Welcome to Washington County, Minnesota. The Doe Network has 5 Jane Does as listed being discovered in the state of Minnesota. Victim 8. Unsolved homicide of Jane Doe. On June 12, 1993, the decomposing body of a female was discovered in rural Washington County, Minnesota. Jane Doe is a white female with the estimated age of 30 to 65 years old. Cause of death is unknown, but the circumstances point to homicide. Jane Doe was located on June 12, 1993 in rural Washington County on the shores of Bone Lake. Shortly after the head was found in Bone Lake in New Scandia Township. The left foot was found about 20 miles away on the Mississippi riverbank near Pig's Eye Lake in St. Paul, Minnesota. The Washington County medical examiner believes that the foot and head belonged to the same woman, partly because they were both cut cleanly. Authorities have sent the woman's description, including descriptions of her dental work, to the National Crime Information Center and every police department in the 5-state area. At this time, there is no movement in the case. If you have any info concerning this case, please call the Ramsey County Medical Examiner Office at 651-266-1700.
Okay, Olivia, is there anything you would like to add to any of these cases?
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing a pattern here with a lot of these cases we're doing. It seems like that, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of them seem to happen in these, like in the Midwest and the cold states, where there's a lot of, I picture these states as having areas where they're desolate, there's nothing around,
Yeah.
So it would be easy to deal with a body, but, I'm just like, I don't know, Minnesota, Wisconsin, you don't think of these things happening in those states because you think, oh, it's the Midwest, everything's happy and it's just a snowy state and this and that, but,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The more and more we're getting into these, and, do these things happen in, like, Arizona and Maine and places like that, too? I guess Maine, too. That's another state
well,
where
yeah,
it would happen, right?
There's a few unsolved cases in Maine, a few missing persons. Arizona has got a lot. Their homicide
How about,
rate
like, Oklahoma, Tennessee? I guess there, too, right?
Well, what I can say about Oklahoma, I worked with Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation for 3 days on the child serial killer David E. Penton, and I was very impressed that the state of Oklahoma has hardly any missing children in the state,
That's
the
what
whole
I mean.
state.
Yeah.
And
how about, like, Mississippi? That's like the deep south.
Mississippi's got a few. We've profiled some of our cases on Mississippi.
Right.
And see, when I look for unsolved homicides, I just like pick a state and I'll just Google unsolved homicides and, like, say the state of Oklahoma, and then it'll give you a whole list and you just pick which one you want to use, and so yeah, there's like I said,
this one case, it's from 1977. That's just, this person's walking around for 45 years, but he could be in any of those, those upper Midwest states. He could be going state to state. You don't know.
Yeah.
That's a long time, but, you'd think with, the technology they have nowadays with forensics, it would be easier, but I guess it's not, there's so many murders. How do you solve these?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. A lot of time on cold cases, it takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of new technology. See, it's not impossible because the technology we have, they have found out if people, at the time of the crime, preserve the evidence correctly, technology does catch up to where that evidence can be tested. And see, that's what I'm saying. There's been cases solved in the 1950s because the investigators saved the evidence. They preserved it right, and that's how it was solved. And so, see, there's a lot of luck on homicides like that in cold cases. And like I said, that's when you really find out. People want to think lightly of it, but this is when you really find out what agency and what officer or detective is actually doing their job.
Right.
Okay, a good example is Clinton County Sheriff's Department, Indiana. I worked with
Okay.
lieutenant on a case. Okay, a Jane Doe was located in Kentucky. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we had a case in Kentucky. Okay, I was in contact with the coroner about that case. Well, the case we had in Indiana, okay, the descriptions match either female. Well, I also learned that Captain Morgan, he reached out to Kentucky to see if it was the girl that we were looking for. And so, see,
Mm.
right there and then, I knew that man was doing his
Yeah.
job.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So,
look at New York. They just caught that guy with the Giglio murders. How long have they been going on? And they
yeah,
finally caught the guy.
yeah, it's been
But
going
New
on a
York is
while.
a totally different thing. They have so many people there, And I think you've worked with somebody in New York, right? Am I correct?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We got.
But New York is
Learn,
a totally different story, and they
yeah,
can separate that from the rest of the country because it's something new every night,
yeah.
going on there.
Uh,
But I tend to think that sometimes these cases, like we say Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas seem like there's not much going on there. They seem pretty, I don't know, maybe there's something. But it seems like some of the cases maybe could be related. The disappearances, like I said, the person that's doing this is just going state to state. Is that possible?
oh, there's some of them definitely that are probably related. Like we profiled a couple cases where they happened a few years apart, but they were in the same town in the same area.
Yeah.
So you got to look at that that's more likely related.
Right.
And
Right.
then, like I said, there's just there's a lot of indicators that cases can be related to each other,
Right.
and besides your obvious signs, but like I
Right.
said, yes, we have learned through the years that okay, serial killers will sometimes take their victim 300 to 600 miles away. So that just fools all their jurisdictions, causes a lot of complications. And okay, a good example
Yeah,
is
but in a case like that where they take them out of state, then the feds get involved with that because that's interstate. And I
well,
believe,
it just depends on the case. Sometimes they do, and
which
sometimes they don't.
I'm going to bring something up now.
Okay.
Let's change the subject, but with Mora in New Hampshire. That's why I feel the feds should have gotten in that because she traveled through how many states?
Yeah,
Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire.
yeah,
They
that's what
should
I'm
be involved
saying.
in that. And
Yeah,
I see that how I'm learning to see how evidence is so important because in the case of Mora and Brianna, I don't believe any evidence or personal belongings of those two was found. So it's making it, I guess, difficult for the investigators to figure out who, could have done this. Because
yeah,
obviously, if you have, like, say, a piece of clothing or, in Mora's case, like a backpack or whatever she had on her, there would be fingerprints on it, correct?
well, there'd be some type of DNA. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. But it's important that, this DNA helps. DNA helps a lot in finding who could have killed these people. But if they're not in the system, that makes it even harder, correct?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank Olivia for being on the show tonight. A special thanks to our viewers and listeners for tuning in, for y'all have been so kind. I have a quote for you all. Sometimes we drift on a sea of forgotten teardrops in the hope of crossing to a better life with no ripples. Author unknown. Always remember, folks, that if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. That's the end of our MJ podcast, the series, Unsolved Crimes. This has been episode 13, part 4, 8 Unsolved Homicides. And we say to all of you, good night from Morrisonville, New York, located in the Adirondack Mountains.
leave here and gone. Float from the ground, out of the body believing all we found. Floating ghost light through the atmosphere, like spirit vines, crawling deep through the underskin. Things will change, like